Okay, this is the four-voice class, and this is a prior CSR that we're going to read all the way through. It is 13 minutes, counted in 25, so we're going to do 2 slashes in 15.
Okay.
All right, we have Ms. Jameson for the plaintiff and Mr. Fong for defense. I am Ms. Jameson for the plaintiff.
I am the witness.
I am the court.
I am Mr. Fong for defense.
Everybody ready? Begins with a question by Ms. Jameson for the record. Mr. Tyler, you are the plaintiff in this lawsuit, is that right?
That's right.
Again, I am Ms. Jameson, and I am your attorney, and I am going to ask you some questions about the accident that relates to this lawsuit. First, what is your residence address?
9260 West Mill Road, Alta, California.
How long have you lived there?
About 30 years.
Do you have any children living at home?
No, ma'am.
How old is your youngest child?
That's a good question.
Who is your current employer?
I work for myself.
You are self-employed doing what, sir?
I operate an orchard and I drive a truck.
Is the orchard located at your residence address you just gave us?
That's correct.
And that's?
Mill Road, correct.
Please allow her to finish your question before you answer. You may anticipate what she is going to ask, but please wait.
Okay.
The reason is that the court reporter can't take down 2 people talking at once. How large is your orchard?
20 acres.
What type of orchard is it?
Almonds and walnuts.
When were the walnut trees planted?
About 1982.
How many acres are in walnuts?
About 3.
When did the walnuts start bearing?
They usually bear in about 4 years.
4 years after planting?
Yes.
With respect to the almonds, when was the almond orchard planted?
About the same time as the walnuts.
When did the almonds start bearing?
Just recently. Last year they were minimal.
Now, the accident we are discussing occurred on September 2nd, 1982. As of that time, how were you earning your living?
Objection irrelevant, Your Honor.
Overruled. You may answer.
I was driving a truck for Richards Transportation.
Who is Richards?
Well, he operates a fleet of trucks.
What is his first name?
I don't know.
Where does he do business?
He operates in California and Nevada. His main office is in Gilroy.
Were you working out of the Gilroy office at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
When you were working for Mr. Richards, how were you compensated?
I was paid by the trip.
With respect to your payment by the trip, were you utilizing your own equipment?
Yes, I used my own tractor.
How much would he compensate you per trip?
It depended on where I went.
What were your usual destinations?
I would go to San Francisco and Oakland and some short runs here in the valley.
Where would you do most of your hauling from?
Well, I was generally dispatched out of the Gilroy yard and I would haul within a 150-mile radius.
Where would your loads originate?
Normally, if we were going to haul cotton, we would haul it from Fresno to Oakland. We would pick up piggybacks, which are on railroad cars.
Did you have to pay your own expenses out of the 90% you got per trip?
Objection, Your Honor. There is no testimony he got a percentage. Further, it's suggestive.
Sustained.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to lead you. Did you receive a percentage of some amount for each trip?
Yes, ma'am, 90%.
And the question is, did you have to pay your own expenses out of that figure?
Yes.
How much would you generally receive for a trip from Sunland to San Francisco?
Maybe $150 less my costs.
How about from Fresno to San Francisco?
That depends on where I started from. I would either be starting from Gilroy and then pick up a load in Fresno, so it varied. It could be about $200.
What sort of records did you maintain about the trips you made?
I had a logbook.
Did you have any records concerning what you were paid by Richards?
Yes, I have paychecks.
Would Richards deduct Social Security and income tax from your checks?
No, ma'am.
Did you get a W-2 form every year from him?
No, because I wasn't his employee. I did my own income taxes.
Did Mr. Richards provide you any paperwork to show how much he compensated you each year?
Well, he would have a quarterly report showing what my earnings were.
Were those 1099 forms?
I don't think so.
With respect to 1982 and up to the time of the accident, how much did you receive from Mr. Richards?
I can't recall at this moment.
Can you give an approximate figure?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled. You may give an estimate.
I can give you an estimation because I don't have the records in front of me.
I will accept an estimate at this time.
Between $16,000 and $20,000.
From those figures, did Mr. Richards deduct anything?
He would take out the fuel cost,
And what would you have to pay yourself?
maintenance of the trailer, insurance, and repairs.
Would you have to pay for your own meals?
I brown bagged it generally.
If you were required to stay overnight someplace, would you be reimbursed for your motel or hotel expense?
No, I usually slept in the tractor. I have a bed in the cab.
Is that what they call a sleeper cab?
Yes, correct.
Do you have any paperwork showing the maintenance figures on your truck for 1981?
I believe so. I can't recall the figures now.
Before we get to the accident itself, I would like to ask you some questions regarding your orchard.
All right.
What time of the year did you start planting the walnut trees?
It would be the planting season, which was usually between January and April.
Before that time, had you been engaged in any sort of farming operation?
Yes, I had almonds there before, but I had to dig them up.
When was that?
Well, that was in progress. I was driving the truck because I had to subsidize the place.
So sometime in 1981, you pulled out the almond orchard.
Correct, yes.
When did you get your initial crop of walnuts?
Last year was really the first significant crop, which was about 8 boxes.
Last year was 1986. Am I correct in stating you got your first major crop in 1986?
Yes,
With respect to the almonds, when did your first almond crop come in?
last year too, but I only got about 1,400 pounds. That wasn't profitable.
As a result of this accident in 1982, you had to hire someone to work your almond and walnut trees. Who did you hire?
Objection, states facts not in evidence.
I agree. You seem to be testifying for your client. Just ask questions, please.
Did you have to employ additional help?
Yes, ma'am, I hired a couple of neighbors.
Was the entire orchard planted by April 1982?
There were 10 acres. I had 3 acres in walnuts.
When was the planting finished?
This year?
Were the 3 acres of walnuts in as of April 1982?
Yes, they were.
Was there any additional walnut acreage put in at any time?
Yes, there were 4 more acres at that time, but they didn't produce. We had to pull them out and consolidate them into the adjacent 3 acres.
Please explain what happened with the 3 acres following that.
Well, we had vacant land until this year when we planted more almond trees again.
As of right now, you have 3 acres of walnuts and approximately 17 of almonds. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Were you injured as a result of this accident? Is that right?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Let me rephrase that. Did you suffer any injuries in this accident?
Yes, ma'am, my left hand.
Were you off work as a result of those injuries?
Yes, ma'am.
Did any doctor release you to go back to work?
Yes, ma'am.
Approximately when was that?
It is in the records. I don't recall exactly. It was after about 4 months.
After your accident?
After the accident.
What doctor released you?
Dr. Sin.
Did you go to work right away?
No, it was about a month later.
Who were you employed by after that, if anyone?
I worked for Richards for a while.
Have you incurred any reduction in your earnings because of the accident?
That is hard to say because you get your trips through a dispatcher. I wouldn't really know. I guess it did diminish because I ended up going to work for myself
When was that?
about 2 years ago
Tell us why you became self-employed then.
because there was not enough work coming in from hauling for Richards.
Why was your work with Richards less?
That I couldn't say.
Did anyone relate to you it was because of the injuries you received from this accident?
I don't know. They sort of inferred it.
Have you since hired anyone to do work in your orchard because you couldn't do it yourself?
Just minimal help.
Can you give me a dollar figure what it cost you?
Well, less than $500.
Is that the total amount since the accident?
Correct.
After the accident, when was the first time you were capable of doing any work in your orchard?
Well, I started to operate the farm equipment using one hand, but it was still giving me problems.
How long after the accident was that?
4 months in that range.
Do you remember where your accident occurred?
Certainly, it was the Logan warehouse.
Before 1982, had you ever been to that warehouse?
Yes,
How many times?
a few times.
You better explain what you mean by few.
Well, we hauled piggies out of there. They were usually barrels of tomato sauce, and they were on pallets.
No further questions at this time.
You may cross-examine, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. With regard to yourself, had you ever backed up into this dock where the accident took place that night?
Yes,
Had you ever experienced any problems backing up to this dock at night because the dock lights blinded you?
yes.
Had you ever complained about that to anyone?
It was not in the relationship with other drivers that you would complain about things like that.
Explain what you mean by that.
If you complain, they would say, "Don't you know how to drive a truck?"
So you never actually complained directly to Logan?
No.
So you don't know what they would have told you if you said anything about the blinding lights?
Objection calls for speculation on the part of this witness.
Sustained.
Are you aware of any other accidents that took place on this dock?
Not to my knowledge.
And before the day of the accident, had you had any problems backing your truck into this dock?
Just with the dock lights if it was dark.
You previously testified you got into your cab and pulled the door shut with your left hand using the exterior door handle. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Was it natural for you to reach out and use the exterior handle?
Yes, the window was open.
Why didn't you grab the inside handle to close it when you realized the other truck was approaching?
It was just a reaction.
We had testimony earlier that one of the dock workers saw you reach out and pull on the mirror.
Is that a question or a statement?
It was merely for foundational purposes. I want to question him regarding that. Did you have your hand on the mirror to close the door?
No, when my hand was actually closing the door, he pushed the mirror backward.
Your testimony is that you did not have your hand on that mirror. Is that correct?
That's correct. There was no reason to.
You were concerned about the other trailer breaking your mirror, weren't you?
Objection, he is leading the witness.
Sustained. Please do not suggest the answer in your question, Mr. Fong. You may proceed.
Were you concerned that the other trailer might break your mirror, Mr. Tyler?
No, I was not.
What would happen if a highway patrol officer saw you driving with a broken mirror on the left-hand side? Would he stop you?
Objection calls for speculation as to what a highway patrolman would do.
Sustained.
Did you have an extra mirror you could put on your tractor?
Not necessarily.
Was there any place close that you could have driven to have another mirror installed?
There is a small round mirror on there also, so that didn't bother me.
Would you have had difficulty backing up without a mirror at your next destination?
That probably would have not broken the bottom because it just seemed it into the truck.
You believe the person who stated he saw your hand on the mirror was mistaken?
Yes,
Did you have any conversation with the other driver after the accident?
I saw him, but I was still in shock. He gave me his jacket to put over me.
Did he say anything to you?
He couldn't.
Did he tell you the lights over the dock blinded him when he was backing up?
He didn't say anything about the accident.
With respect to yourself, at the time the accident happened, was your trailer loaded?
Not yet, no.
Had they started loading it?
I think they were preparing to. They had not started.
Could you hear any forklifts in the dock area or in your trailer?
I wasn't aware of any at that time.
As far as you know, the loading of your trailer had not commenced, right?
Objection asked and answered. That's been asked and answered.
Overruled.
You may answer.
Nothing was loaded yet.
At any time after this accident, do you recall anything the other guy said to you?
I saw him a year later.
Did he say anything then?
He said, "I'm sorry I ran into you."
Do you recall talking with anyone at Logan after that?
No,
Do you recall hearing anything that was said at Logan after the accident?
not really, no.
Has anyone mentioned to you at any time since the accident that the lights over the dock blinded the other drivers?
No, I talked to others since then because I brought it to their attention.
I have nothing further at this time.
Ms. Jameson, do you have any redirect examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well, you may proceed.
How many times approximately had you hauled products from Logan?
Maybe 50.
When you had gone to Logan the day of the accident, how did you know to go to that location?
I was dispatched there by Richards,
Who dispatched you?
the dispatcher for Richards.
And what kind of paperwork were you given, if any?
Well, we were just told to go there. The paperwork would generate out of the Logan plant or warehouse.
When you arrived at the warehouse, where would you normally park?
At the entrance going into the unit, that was before we backed up to the loading dock.
Did you get out of your tractor and proceed to any office?
Yes, and the dispatcher would inform us what time we were expected to be unloaded and what dock number.
Were you ever provided any instructions other than when and where to report?
Nothing else unless they wanted you to move to another dock.
Subsequently, were you then instructed what dock you were to back into?
Yes,
You arrived at the Logan warehouse at what time?
it was dusk. I was already there before dawn. I'm sorry, before dusk.
Excuse me. We will take a short break.
All right, this will be some 200 words per minute practice. We have Mr. Dalton for the people, Mr. Dedekam for defense. I am attorney for the people, Mr. Dalton.
I am the witness.
I am the court.
I am Mr. Dedekam for defense.
So 15th, yes. That is Mr. Dedekam.
Up at the top?
With line 6, I'm
Six?
sorry.
Okay. All right. Question by Mr. Dedekam for the record.
Thank you. And are you employed, sir?
Yes,
And what kind of employment is that, sir?
I am an entertainer. I work for John Lewis Productions.
All right, directing your attention, Mr. Baker, to the early morning hours of May the 11th of last year. Had you worked that evening?
Yes, sir.
And approximately what time did you get off work, sir?
Well, I finished my last show around 1:30.
And where did you go then, sir?
Well, I changed clothes and I went to Denny's.
All right, and were you with someone at that time?
Yes,
And who would that be, sir?
my girlfriend.
And you had something to eat at Denny's?
Right.
All right. And then where did you go, sir?
Took her home.
And where does she live, sir?
2251 East Sonora,
Is this in the vicinity of Eddie's liquor store?
across the street.
Now, you say across the street. His place is on East Main Street, is that correct?
Right.
And Sonora, there is an unusual intersection there, is that correct?
A Y-type intersection.
Y-type intersection?
Uh-huh.
Incidentally, if I can direct your attention to this exhibit, the district attorney has brought this exhibit in and indicate to you that this is Main Street running west and Main Street running east, and this would be Sonora, approximately there, if this was Eddie's liquor store, is that correct?
Right.
And this street comes off at an angle, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, mark Sonora Street on there, Mr. Dedekin.
Fine.
It is marked on it, but it is marked on the wrong side. Let's mark it on the other side. Would that be Sonora?
This would be Sonora here.
Well, we can't read that. Better make it pretty big, not up there, right there where you had it.
Can't get it all in there.
All right, very well.
Now, Mr. Baker, would you please step down here to this board
Can the jury see that? Very well.
and show me where your girlfriend lives in relation to Eddie's liquor store?
About right here.
About right there?
Let's mark it. Let's mark it, Mr. Dedekin.
All right.
Well, use his initials.
All right. Now, this intersection in here, does this have any houses in it?
Right, in this Y.
Yes.
There is a gas station about, right along here, but there is McDonald and there is a gas station there.
This is marked McDonald. Step to the side here. Now, this particular evening, did you have occasion to park your car in front of this home?
Well, a little bit past it,
All right.
west.
Will you put a little X mark about where you had your car?
Car?
Right here. Yes.
Right here.
All right. And you relate that to any particular thing? I will put CB car on the X marked on Sonora Street for the record.
This here really doesn't give enough room.
Step back up and I will show you some photographs. Step back up, Mr. Baker.
Okay.
I wonder if we might have these marked as defendants next in order.
Yes, they may be marked B, C, and D. Are they? That would be defendants B, C, and D.
I will show you defendants B for identification and ask you if you recognize that photograph, sir.
Yeah, this is a general area right here.
This is the general area and this would be looking in what direction, sir?
Well, from Eddie's north.
That would be looking from Eddie's north. And where's your girlfriend's house?
Right here.
This is her house right here.
Right.
Why don't you mark that? All right.
All right, so let's mark this house, right?
All right.
Now, can you recognize a spot where your car was parked that particular evening, sir?
Right here.
Right where that black car is parked, right?
Uh-huh.
Mark it.
Let's mark a little X on that.
You have marked it car, huh?
I marked it car.
That's the witness's car?
That's right.
Very well. What exhibit is that?
This would be on defendants B.
Very well.
All right, now I will show you a photograph, sir, and ask you if you recognize that.
Yes, from what you marked there, this would be my car looking.
To Eddie's, where you were parked that particular night, is that correct?
Uh-huh.
Let's mark this with an X and car. In fact, I will put CB car, and
That would be looking south towards Eddie's. Is that right?
Yes.
this would be looking south towards Eddie's. Is that right?
Yes.
That's on defendant's exhibit. What?
This would be on defendant's exhibit C.
Very well.
With the exception that this car wasn't there.
This particular car was not there at that time. Is that correct?
No, sir.
Very well.
This other vehicle over in here was
Yes, sir.
the Chevy, right?
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Now, Mr. Baker, approximately what time were you parked there?
Oh, around 2:30, something like that.
Was it later than that, or did you look at your watch, sir?
Well, I looked at the time when I left Eddie's.
All right.
2:30 what?
And what time was it when you left Eddie's that you recall?
About 2:30.
AM or PM?
In the morning,
In the morning. All right. Very well. I realize it. But the record wouldn't show it, so now we have the record clear.
Now, you arrived at the house then, or you arrived at that parking spot about 2:30. Is that your best estimate?
Right.
And do you have any idea how long you were parked there, sir?
From the time I left,
Well,
a good half hour.
from the time you parked there, how long did you stay?
A good half hour.
You stayed there approximately a half hour.
Uh-huh.
That would mean you left at approximately 3 a.m. in the morning. Is that correct?
About that time, yes.
And did you see anything unusual that night?
Yes, I did.
And would you relate to the court exactly what you saw, Mr. Baker?
Well, I saw this car come. It was coming.
Well, first of all, you say you saw a car. What kind of a car, sir?
It was a Chevy SUV.
A Chevy SUV. I am going to show you People's Exhibit 15 for identification, or this is actually in evidence, and ask you if you recognize the vehicle in that picture.
It looks like the car.
The same Chevy SUV?
Yes.
Do you recall what model it was?
Maybe a Tahoe.
Do you recall what year it was?
I don't know. But it looked like a newer one.
And do you recall what color it was?
It was dark blue or black.
All right. Now, I wonder if you would step to the board again for me, sir. Will you step around here to the board and show me where this car came from and where it went? If you will, just step to the side so the jurors can see this.
The car came this way on Main Street
You can just mark it with little dots if you like.
and turned here. And I actually noticed it. I guess it came this way, but I noticed it when it came here because it was coming very slow. Then it came here and stopped.
And parked right in that area there. I wonder if you could draw a little car right in here. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
And we will put SUV. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, what occurred at that time?
Well, the lights turned off.
The lights on the car, you mean, turned off?
No, the headlights turned off and the parking lights came on. And it just sat there, maybe a minute. Then this lady got out,
And can you tell me what the street lighting is out there in this area?
Well, there is a street light here about here. This parking lot, it's a store. It used to be a grocery store.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this testimony as to the relevance of it. I don't see what the relevance is to this case.
The objection is overruled at this time, subject to a motion to strike.
All right, now you can step back up to the stand again. Now you say you saw a lady stop there, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you Defendant's Exhibit number D for identification and ask you if you recognize that picture.
Yeah, that is looking east on Sonora out to Main Street.
All right, will you put a little X mark just where you saw the SUV stop? We will mark that SUV. All right, now what, if anything, did this lady do at this time?
Well, she stopped, like I say. She sat there a while. And so we just sat there looking at her, wondering what she was doing at this time of the morning by herself. So anyway, she got out of the car and she got something out, with her, a bag or something, She closed the door and she walked to the rear of the car, went to the corner, which is directly in the Y.
That would be down into this corner right there, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Behind the car?
Yes, sir.
All right, then what did she do?
Then she walked back east on East Main Street.
That would be in this direction, sir?
Yes, sir.
And did you see her all of this time while
No, sir.
she actually went out of sight, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, did she eventually come back to the car?
Yes, sir.
And approximately how long was she gone?
5 minutes.
Now, when she came back, you say she had a bag with her. Was this a purse?
I believe it was.
All right. And she came back to the door. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What, if anything, did she do at that time?
All right, this will be some warm up at 210. We have Mr. Townsell for the people, Mr. Lee for defense. I am attorney for the people, Mr. Townsell.
I am the witness.
I am the court.
I am attorney for defense, Mr. Lee. Begins with a question by Mr. Lee. For the record, when he came up, did he say anything to you or Joe?
Not until I was just getting ready to leave.
What did he then say?
The comment was made to Joe, not to me. He said, I want to kill you for messing with my girl. That's all he said.
Did you hear him say, I want to kill you for messing with my girl?
He said, I want to kill you for messing with my girl. That's what made me stop.
What did Joe do when the man said he wanted to kill him?
Joe said he didn't have to mess with his girl because he had one of his own.
What did the man do next?
He moved towards Joe, and Joe put his hands up above his shoulders, something like this.
Did Joe try and strike the man in any way?
He backed away from him.
You indicated that he put his hands up like this. Your palms are open facing the man. Is that the way Joe did it?
He was backing away from the man that way.
What was the man doing to Joe while Joe was backing away?
He was walking towards him.
Was he striking Joe in any manner?
No, he hadn't touched him, but he was moving towards him.
What was Joe doing while the man was walking towards him?
Joe looked like he was trying to figure out how to get around the man.
And did Joe ever get away from the man?
Yes, I saw Joe get around him and run into the cafeteria, and then the man followed him. At that point, I left to go find the security guard.
Approximately how far did Joe back up while the man was approaching him?
3-4 steps.
Did he back up into a wall or any other object?
No, he backed enough so he could get around. There's a dumpster there, to get around the dumpster, to get to the other cafeteria door.
Was the man saying anything to Joe at that time?
Neither one was saying anything while they were walking.
I'm sorry, was the man poking Joe in the chest?
He hadn't touched him. He was just moving towards him. I don't know if his fist was closed or not. I know he was close to him.
At some point you saw Joe get away from the man?
I saw Joe get around him and go into the cafeteria moving quite fast, and the man followed him. When the man actually got into the cafeteria, which I could see through the windows, I took off down the hallway to find the security guard.
Was Joe running from the man when you saw him?
Yes, he ran into the cafeteria.
Was the man chasing him into the cafeteria?
The man followed him into the cafeteria quite fast, and I thought I better get the security guard.
At the time you saw Joe and the man, after the man said he was going to kill Joe, was there any physical contact at all with the man?
No, there was no physical contact by either one of them that I saw.
And after Joe ran away from the man, when was the next time you saw him?
I saw him near our employee entrance by the back door of the building. It's considered the back door.
Was that after Joe left the cafeteria?
He was coming down from the second floor stairs. Yes, I was by the back door that leads out of the Justice Building.
I have no more questions.
Ms. Nelson, would it be fair to say that you never saw anything that happened when Joe and the other man got into the cafeteria?
No, I saw Joe running to the cafeteria and the man went that way. And I took off to go find the security guard.
Thank you. I have nothing further, ma'am.
All right.
Nothing more, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nelson. Any further witnesses, Mr. Lee?
No, that's it. The defense rests.
Any rebuttal?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Anybody wish to be heard?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Your Honor, I think it's very clear that this is a case of self-defense and nothing more. Mr. Bridges' response is nothing more than a justification of a scared man who has been told that he's going to be killed by this individual. He struck a blow. The man went down. There is no indication he knew the man was unconscious.
Okay. Well, in regard to the applicable law, it seems to me that while Mr. Duffy may have stated that he wanted to kill the defendant, there was no evidence of any weapon, and that therefore is mere words. And even though mere words may justify, together with the pushing testified to, a response of self-defense, clearly, once the person is on the ground stomping on him 8 times in the head and face, is certainly well beyond that force which is necessary to render an assailant no longer a threat. And therefore, the court feels there's sufficient cause to believe that the offense charged in the complaint, the violation of Section 245A of the Penal Code, has occurred, and there's sufficient cause to believe the defendant is guilty of that charge. The defendant is ordered to answer in Department 4 of the Superior Court at 9 a.m. on March 24th.
Can I just check that date, Your Honor?
That will be the normal time. If there's any problem, we can adjust that.
That's fine, Your Honor.